right, as promised, as advertised, as mentioned, and as subtly suggested, this afternoon, we will be working on your unique value proposition. I will tell you that this is, along with the 10X concept and the elements of rapport and the copywriting components, probably the 4 most significant things that you can take from this event. We've shared a lot of information, and we've shared a lot of strategies, and we have a bunch more tomorrow that I'll tell you about at the end of the day. But the unique value proposition really is kind of the thread throughout everything that you do. If you remember yesterday when I was making the distinction between tactics and strategy, I used the strand of pearls analogy, that tactics are kind of like the pearls that kind of like lay around, and then you take the strategy which kind of weaves through those pearls and turns them into a necklace. Well, your unique value proposition is kind of that same strain, that same strand, that same string that weaves throughout everything that you do from a marketing standpoint and even from an operations standpoint. Because if you can't understand the value that you bring to the marketplace, you can't expect the marketplace to understand the value that you bring to them. Now, I will tell you that there's a very common phenomenon that I come across, because I come across it in my own life, truth be known, bare my soul, that I assume in many cases that what I know, everyone else knows. I assume that the value that I know about what I do, that many other people know. It's one of the reasons why I don't write my own copy. That's why guys like Brett, are so valuable, because they can take what we assume that the market already knows, or that the market, sees as something that is kind of a commodity, and they can take it and articulate it in ways that we can't often do ourselves. Now, I will tell you that the best way to do it is to be very clear about the value that you have in your marketplace, the value that you have in your product, the value that you have in your service. A lot of people talk about unique selling proposition. Rosser Reeves first brought it up in, I think, 1954 in one of his books, and it's been around for a long time. But unfortunately, I think the concept of a unique selling proposition is a bit outdated. And I think it's a disservice to walk around and say that you have a unique selling proposition, because it implies basically that you're selling something as opposed to creating value. That's why I use the term unique value proposition. I'm going to give you a handout here in about 15 or 20 minutes that will actually help you start to formulate that. Because ideally you want to be able to articulate not just to your marketplace, but also to your internal organization, to your potential joint venture partners. I was having a conversation when we were at the break about the speaking business with a couple people who are in the speaking business. And they said, well, how do you get joint venture partners on board, or how do you work with other speakers when you go to a multi-speaker event? Do you guys kind of compete with one another? No, you really don't, because if you can distinguish yourself in the marketplace, if you can distinguish yourself to your clients from a value proposition standpoint, where they see you as preeminent, they see you as exclusive, they see you as something distinctly different than anyone else, you're not really competing. Someone asked the question yesterday, I can't remember who it was or where they're sitting, but they asked the question about, well, what if someone's way up here and you kind of see yourself down here? Well, you change the criteria, right? Now you're way up here. But you can't do that until you have the ability to really see the value of your product, and the product of your service, or the product of the quality of the product, or the quality of the service that you offer. So I'm going to give you an exercise that we're going to do in the class, and then I'm going to give you one that you can take home tonight that will actually go a little bit deeper. But let me start with some things that will be a little bit overlapping and a little bit building on what Brett was talking about. Number one, understand that people don't buy things. They buy results, they buy solutions, or they buy a benefit. Okay? The old analogy that when you go to a hardware store to buy a drill, you don't really want a drill. What you want is a hole. Right? You don't care if they call it a drill, if they call it an apple, as long as it puts a hole in the wall, that's what you want. Okay? You have to be able to understand what the benefits are, or what the results, or what the solution that your product or service brings. The better you can articulate that to your marketplace, and the more they understand it, the more it meets how they see the world, the more it meets how they see the problem or the opportunity, the easier it is for them to buy. Okay? The language you use, the medium you use, the message that you use, the articulation of the benefits. The next is understand that people don't buy products or services. They don't even buy companies. They don't even buy people. As much as we'd all like to think that people do business with us because they love us and admire us, what they do is that they buy their beliefs. And those beliefs are backed up by evidence. Okay? I believe my wife loves me, and I think she does, and I hope she does, and she believes that she loves me because she believes that I'm a good person. And hopefully I've demonstrated that over the fact that we've been married 9 years, and I think I do a pretty good job of being a husband, do my best. Sometimes I forget things like Darren and the cruise, which I'll never let him forget. But what she's really buying is that she's buying the perception that she has of me in her own mind and in her own heart and in her emotions that are backed up by the evidence that I demonstrate on a daily, weekly, monthly, hopefully yearly basis, and hopefully a long-term basis. So you have to understand that in many cases, while you know what your benefit is, and while you know how credible your product or service is, and while you know how much integrity you have in your product or service, and while you know how good your people are and how much energy and creativity and love and passion and all those things that you put into your product or service, until you can get the market to believe that, perceive that, and back it up by some form of evidence that they emotionally engage in or emotionally buy, they're not going to see you as any different than any other product or any other service. You become a commodity.
I was just going to say, take McDonald's. Do they have great food or particularly really healthy food at McDonald's? Not really, yet they're the #1 restaurant in the world for selling food because of the beliefs and the things that they've built up in their marketing. Right.
I'm going to share a process with you in a moment of how you can create a really, really effective USP or UVP in just a handful of steps, like 4 steps. But before we do that, I want to make a distinction. Sometimes a unique value proposition can be a slogan. Most of the time it's not. If you can get it into 2 or 3 sentences, that's pretty doggone good. If you can get it into a single phrase or a single sentence, that's great. I will tell you that be careful of building your unique value proposition into a slogan, because slogans can become outdated, they can be mocked, they can be knocked off, and all of a sudden it goes away. And I'll give you an example. There were 2 car companies in the 70s in the States, and one of them came up with, and I won't name the names of the companies, you may know them, but the #2 company in the U.S. in rental cars had a slogan: "We're #2, we try harder." Right? For 15 years, worked like magic. It died overnight. You know why? The #1 company came out and said there's a reason why they're #2. There goes the slogan. There goes the USP. There goes the UVP. Now all of a sudden people didn't see it as a value proposition. They saw that slogan as a joke. They don't use it anymore. So while it is great if you can take your unique value proposition and put it into a slogan and you can sing it like a jingle and people can recognize it, just be very, very careful of that, because there's only a limited amount of value that you can articulate in that. There's a limited amount of distinction that you can articulate in a slogan. Okay, so how do you create a unique value proposition? #1 starts by answering a few questions. Who is your target market or buyer? Brett was talking about that. Know the language, know the pains, know the fears, know the hopes, the desires. One of the most powerful exercises you can do is create a avatar client, a client avatar, where you sit down and you say, okay, here's the name of my prospect, here is the name of my target market, and this person's name is Joe Smith, Mary Smith, or whatever. Here's what Mary Smith does throughout the course of her day. Here are the hopes, the pains, the fears, the desires that she faces. This is what she deals with when she gets up in the morning. This is what she deals with through the course of her day. This is what she thinks about when she goes to sleep. This is what wakes her up in the middle of the night. This is what Mary Smith hopes to have in her life one day. These are the things that prevent her from having that. Mary Smith would like to weigh 120 pounds. She'd like to look younger forever. She'd like to have a husband that's in love with her for the rest of her life. She would love to have the passion of her life that she sees in a romance novel sleep beside her every night when she goes to bed and be there every morning when she wakes up. She'd love to have children that listen to her every single day, treat her with respect, clean up their rooms, and never talk back. Now, all you have to do is find a product that satisfies all those things, and you got the market captured. But in all seriousness, what you need to do is you really need to step into the lives, or step into the shoes, or step into the eyes. You know, there's an old slogan, Joe Smith buys what Joe Smith buys because you see the world through Joe Smith's eyes. Have you ever heard that? Something like that. But what you need to do is that you really need to know who your target market or buyer is. And the more narrowly you can define that, the more clearly you can articulate what they do, what they read, what they eat, what they think about, what they're concerned about, what aggravates them, as Brett was saying. The more clearly you can articulate that, the more plainly and the more effectively you can speak to them, not just in your copywriting, not just in your advertising, but also in your unique value proposition. What do they want or need? Why do they want it? And why do they need it? Okay, if you're going to write copy, or if you're going to write advertising, or if you're going to evaluate the copy that someone else writes for you, the reason why. Why do they want something? Why do they need it? Why is it important? Why do they buy it from you? Right? How can you give what you give to them as a solution or as a benefit better than anyone else? Okay, could be price, could be distinction, it could be a location, it could be a unique characteristic, it could be because you're the greatest person in the world, it could be because of your return policy or your guarantee. Differentiation or distinction. Now, there's a whole bunch of things that you can use, and these are kind of macro areas. Okay, geography. Okay, sometimes people like to do business on a local basis. Sometimes they like the prestige of doing something with a foreign product. It has a little bit of intrigue or mystique about it. Could be pricing or selection. Could be quality, quantity, or the service. Service meaning that you get it out in 24 hours. It could be that you stand behind your product and you give them an unconditional money-back guarantee. It could be that you have a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week helpline in case someone has a question. It could be that every time a product gets updated, they get free upgrades. It could be your delivery time. It could be your expertise. Okay, that could be your unique value proposition. Mike, who was here earlier in the room, we talked about him being an expert in Google AdWords. That's his unique value proposition when it comes to being an online marketer, being a business person, right? The fact that he's a Google AdWords expert. Could be the size of your company, both big or small. Some people like to do business with small companies because it's more personal service, it's more interactive. Now, if you go over to the States and you ask people how many people want to do business with a small bank today, how many people you think are going to say yes? Not very many. Okay, but depending on your geography, depending on the product or service that you have, it could be an advantage to be large. It could be an advantage to be small. It could be an advantage to be in between. We're big enough to be here for a long time, but we're small enough to still give you personal service. Okay, longevity. In some industries, longevity is considered a benefit. In some cases, considered a liability. Right? Some people want a business. They want an insurance company that's been around for a long, long time. Okay, longevity is a great advantage. If you're a cutting-edge fashion company that's on the cusp of every new trend that comes out, they probably don't want to do business with a company that's been around 150 years, right? They seem kind of old and kind of stodgy, kind of outdated, maybe too institutional, too traditional to be hip. Relationships. The relationships that you have, everyone in this room, gives you a unique value proposition because it gives you access to expertise, gives you access to resources, gives you access to markets, gives you access to products and services, gives you access to information and knowledge about other products and services that no one else has. And that combination that you have within you and within your network becomes part of your unique value proposition. Now, how you articulate that is really up to you, and how you articulate it really should be based on how you see it as an advantage to your marketplace and to your clients and to your prospects. Does that make sense? Yes? Yes. Okay. Value enhancements. Okay? Front ends, back ends, upsells, downsells. For a lot of people, that could be an advantage because if I go into a buying cycle, I go into a selling funnel. For me, a lot of times it's an advantage that if I go in there, I know that that person's going to continue to put additional products or additional services or additional offerings that are extensions of what I'm already engaged in. I go to a 3-day seminar and I get lots of benefit out of it, and all of a sudden they offer a 5-day seminar. To me, as a buyer, as a consumer, as a client, if I trust that person, if I like that person, if they have expertise, they have knowledge that I want, I'm very happy with the fact that they have a back end. I don't have to go out and search for another solution. Or they have relationships that can provide those things. I'm very happy for that solution. So in many cases, having a product that is a back end where people can get to know you very safely and very effectively, very inexpensively on the front end, like through a book or something like that, and now they have an opportunity to perhaps enter into a deeper relationship because you have a DVD package or something like that that offers them an enhanced experience, or a seminar that they can come to and kind of get to know you and kind of have the pages come to life and stand on stage in front of you. I'm using the speaking business because that's part of what I do, but you can do that with any business. And again, thinking about the value of trust and the fact that a sale does not occur until someone has had a certain degree of trust and faith placed in you and your product or service. And now, and for people to make that decision, it's a hard decision. I mean, think about, making, the decision to get married. Now, I'm not saying that if you go out and you buy an apple at the store, it's the same level of commitment as if you get married. But at the same time, every time someone enters into a transaction, there's a degree of risk, right? I'm going to go buy an apple and I'm going to bite into it and it's going to have a worm in there because they have their produce laying around for 7 weeks. I'm not going to go there anymore. In the States, there's a place called Whole Foods. And ask Darren. I mean, Darren and his family love it when he comes over to see me in the States because you go there and all the food is fresh. Most of it's natural and it's all healthy. And there are gigantic stores that are bigger than this hotel. And you go in there, every piece of produce that you get is pesticide free. It's fresh. It's crisp. It's great selection. It's just beautiful. And when I found that, to me, it was in heaven. I told Darren the other day I'd like to have a condo up there with an escalator that goes down into that. But it took me 5 years before I found it. Right? So think about that when someone finally comes to you, comes to your company, comes to your product, comes to your service, I mean, they've invested their time and their energy and their hard work, their research or whatever to find a quality relationship, to find a quality transaction that they can enter into with great faith and great hope that there's going to be a consistency delivered there. And the more clearly you can articulate what the value is and what people can expect from you and what they can expect from when they do business with you, that's a currency that you've created. That's a currency, the relationship currency. And if you have other products and you have other services, it's not just the fact that you take advantage of another transaction. It's the fact that you're able to add value to that relationship that you've cultivated for so long and they've invested so hard in. Okay, key elements of an effective UBP. A clearly stated benefit. It's distinguishing from the competitors. Hopefully it quantifies or qualifies what you do. It sets the criteria for the buyer so they know what to expect. It educates as well as distinguishes. It says, okay, this is what you should be looking for. Okay, here are the reasons why. And ideally, it should be brief. Now, in some cases, you can come up with a marketing plan that states, this whole marketing position of who you are. It could be like 15 pages, and you can put it in the front of your brochure. But I can absolutely positively guarantee you not more than 1% of the people are going to read that. Okay, so ideally, you want to get it brief. If you can get it articulated in a few sentences, tremendous. Let me give you an example of a UVP, and it was a slogan, and it took a small operating pizza chain that you probably know from being just a run-of-the-mill pizza chain to being probably close to $1 billion company. It was a huge franchise. It was Domino's Pizza. And when I say it, you're going to remember it, but I'm going to actually show it to you in the context of what we have here. Okay, Domino's Pizza. They don't use this anymore, but when it came out, it built the company. You get fresh, hot pizza delivered to your door in 30 minutes or less, or it's free. What do you get? Hot pizza, and it's fresh, right? Didn't say it's delicious, didn't say it's the world's best, didn't say it's authentic Italian, just says it's hot and it's fresh. Didn't even say it's good, okay? You get it delivered to your door in 30 minutes, okay? They didn't talk about the dining experience when you wanted to find a restaurant, Mama's Pizza with people that speak Italian and Italian music and Chianti and all that kind of stuff. Or it's free, okay? We do hot, fresh pizza. You get it in 30 minutes or less. Why would you want it? It's implied, okay? You want it fast. You get home from work. You don't feel like cooking. You don't feel like going to the pizza shop. You want something to show up because you're hungry now and you want it now. Okay? Or it's free. Now, the or is really up to you. I mean, because in some cases, you're not going to have, the free or you're not going to have the money back, but you can put in a conditional guarantee. You can put in a risk reversal that really warrants the experience. If you don't like the pizza, we'll give you a coupon for something else. We'll give you a competitor's coupon if you don't like our pizza. Right? They send coupons out all the time. You get them, you collect them, you Send them to your competitor. But think about what it is when you warrant something, if it doesn't happen the way you expect that it's going to happen, what can you compensate people for so that they say, you know what, there's a risk here, but I'm willing to take the risk because they're willing to stand behind it. It doesn't always have to be a money-back guarantee. In fact, Domino's Pizza dropped the free thing when one of their delivery drivers had an accident and someone sued the corporation and went after him and said, you know what, you're putting people in dangerous situations. So in some cases, it's not always good to do that. Okay, what we're going to do now is I'm going to hand out, or we're going to have handed out, a worksheet. And it's called Developing Your Unique Value Proposition. Now, this is a brief 8-question questionnaire. You should be able to do most of the questions off the top of your head. But tonight, as part of your homework, we're going to give you something that's a little bit more detailed so you can think about it more deeply. Because it is so important, we want you to get started on it, but we don't want you to think that you're going to go answer these 8 questions and walk out and dominate your market through your UVP because you took 15 minutes to go through these 8 questions that Darren and I so astutely developed. I'm going to read the questions because I want to explain them a little bit. Number 1, what is your company great at? Remember your SWOT analysis yesterday? There's a reason why we had you start thinking about that stuff. What is your company great at? Okay, there's got to be something that you're great at. You could be great at being mediocre. Okay, so there's no one in this room that could say they can't be great at something. Number 2, what is your company good at? Because you may not be in the upper echelon of your market or your industry. You may be really consistent, but you also may be really good at certain things. Okay, so what are you great at? What are you good at? What is your company better at than most of your competitors? What's the definition of an expert? Someone that knows more than 51% of the population. Actually, 50.000000001, I guess. But if you're better at something than most of your competitors, that can be part of your unique value proposition. You don't have to be the world's #1 anything. You don't even have to be the best. You just have to be consistent with what it is that you're offering and what it is that you're putting out to the marketplace and being able to deliver that in a congruent and consistent way. Okay? What are the primary benefits of doing business with your company? What solutions do you offer? What wants or needs of your clients in your marketplace do you serve? What pains do you solve or eliminate or avoid? Or what pleasures do you produce or provide? Did you want to make a comment, Darren?
No.
Number 5, what makes doing business with you or your company a unique experience? Okay, I mean, think about a health spa. There's lots of spas out there. Okay, there's commercial spas. There's 15-minute massage salons. You go in there, you get a 15-minute head and neck massage. Right? That's a whole different experience than if you go to a day spa. You go to a day spa and they do your nails and they give you hot towels and rub your neck a little bit, give you some herbal tea, some fruit maybe, you know, and let you sit and take a steam before you go get your massage. And when you get your steam, then you get a nice shower. You come back and you listen to some soothing music, and that's a whole different experience, right? But what makes doing business with you or your company a unique experience? You don't have to serve every person in the marketplace. In fact, if you're trying to serve every person in the marketplace, you're going to be so diluted or they're going to be so disappointed that you're not going to be in business very long. What measurable data do you have to support your position? Measurable data. Could be quantification, could be qualification. According to whom? You know, we're the most luxurious day spa in all of Melbourne. If you don't believe us, ask our clients. Here's 50 testimonials. Here's 50 pictures of lovely people that are just enjoying themselves. Here's our website where you can go in and see feedback from people who have experienced it in the past. Here's Darren Stevens, the famous Darren Stevens, saying that that my day spa is the best in all of Melbourne. Right? Credibility, endorsements.
As Spike was saying, an endorsement for women's gyms here in Australia was Fernwood Gym. What launched their whole business to where it is today was simply because they got the Lisa Kara-Kenny to do the endorsement for them. You know, it was a paid celebrity endorsement for the gyms, but that's what launched them as a franchise system. All right? So to give them that credibility.
Yep. What are the weaknesses of your competitors? Remember the rental car example that I used? What was implied in that slogan for the company before it was killed by the other company was that they were so big that they didn't have to try. They didn't have to go the extra mile because they were number one, and they were probably lazy and complacent. But what are the weaknesses of your competitors? Because if you can point them out, and you don't have to name your competitors, but the bottom line is that, especially with common products and services, please forgive me, Bill Gates, but most people I know, when they got Vista on their computers, they were madder than hell. Right?
How many would agree with that? Yep, that's pretty consistent.
What did Mac do? They came out and they made jokes about Vista. Okay, they pointed out the weaknesses of their competitors. Now, Apple, being a big corporation that they are, they could probably afford the litigation if they got into it. But the bottom line is, everyone knew that used Vista, at least someone who had a problem with it. Even if they didn't have a problem with it, they knew somebody who did. And the media told you that there was problems with it. The newspapers told you there were problems with it. The websites told you there were problems with it. So it was common knowledge that their competitor had a weakness, and Apple pointed it out. And it wasn't to make Microsoft look bad. It was to make Apple look better. Okay. Now notice I have a PC and I have Vista. So, Bill, I still believe in you, buddy. Okay. Number 8. What should everyone who does business in your industry know that is not widely known, communicated, or articulated? Remember the example that Darren used yesterday on the brewery and Brett mentioned again today, which was Schlitz. Okay? It wasn't the fact that they triple steamed and triple sterilized the bottles. It wasn't the fact that they purified the water. It wasn't the fact that they had 4-inch glass when they brewed the beer. It's the fact that they were the first one to articulate it that made it all the difference. Okay? Everyone in your industry can be doing the very same thing, but if you articulate the benefits more clearly, more concisely, more consistently, and more experientially than your competitors, and you're the first to do it, you will dominate that market for a period of time. Okay? So, Darren, is there anything you want to add before we get them into the exercise of doing it?
Just as an example, how many people here used to fly Qantas or has flown Qantas? Now, how many people believe they get a better experience when they fly Virgin or have tried Virgin? Yeah, I can tell you, I'm a Qantas member, I'm a Virgin member as well. However, the difference over the years that I've seen with Qantas compared to what Virgin did, because they come in and picked all the weaknesses, and even with the loyalty program as far as points, pointed them all out, and now they dominate a big section of that market. And certainly I've just recently been flying over to the UK, and I flew, rather than Qantas, I flew on Virgin Atlantic, and it was the most amazing experience. Right, their first and business class was just unbelievable. But the whole service on the whole plane right through was amazing. They've taken anything that anyone's ever had a complaint about or thought about from Qantas and the other airlines, and they've turned it on their head. Things that people knock off on planes, the little salt and pepper shakers and things like that, they purposely have in business class and first class these beautiful silver salt and pepper shakers, and underneath them it says, stolen from Virgin Atlantic. And they purposely make a joke out of it, saying, look, everyone pinches them, so you may as well. And it actually has it printed on the bottom. Right, so you can take them as souvenirs and things like that. So,
yeah. Let me give you a context.
And you get doonas, and you get massages, and all this on the plane, because they've looked at what the customer really wanted. Yeah. And their price to go on Virgin is cheaper than going on Qantas, yet the service is tenfold.
Let me give you a distinction, or an alternative to that. Southwest Airlines in the United States, okay? They don't offer you salt and pepper. They give you peanuts or pretzels, and they're probably stale. But when you get on a Southwest airplane, you're going to get cattle car. Now, if you pay a little extra, you can board it first, and you can rush to the aisle seats, and you can sit in the exit row or something like that. But they don't give you a massage. They don't give you champagne. They don't give you a lot of things, but that's not their unique value proposition. Their unique value proposition is that they'll get you there fast, they'll get you there often, they'll get you there cheaply. I commute between Northern California and Southern California several times a month, sometimes almost every week, sometimes several times a week. Between Sacramento, where I live, which is a very small airport and it's a medium-sized city, to the Los Angeles area, any given day between five airports in the Los Angeles area, I could take one of 24 flights. Okay, I don't fly the higher-end airlines. I fly Southwest because they're a commuter, and I want to get there. And I know 3 hours from now I want to get home to see my kid's football game, and I'm running late, and I got to change my flight. I can't wait till the next day. right? I'm going to run to the Southwest website. I'm going to see what the next flight is, which airport it is, and I'm going to get there, hop on a plane, get my butt to Sacramento, get to my kid's game. That's what I want at that time. Now, if I'm flying across the ocean, I may want a completely different experience. But Southwest doesn't pretend to be Virgin, and Virgin doesn't pretend to be Southwest.